to arrive, but it hadn't been enough time. There had been no need to clear the deck after the world went dark. It had been kept as clean as possible by the ship's skeleton crew, but not to the standards required for an actual aircraft landing. It ended up being a lot of work to make sure there was nothing on the platform that could become a rotor-launched weapon. With Uncle Murphy always paying a visit at the worst of times, even a single screw or bolt could be turned into a projectile by the rotor's downwash and permanently damage the ship. The Seahawk began to pull around to Freedom's aft, where the ship's platform was located. Tiarat was tempted to break protocol and observe the landing, but there were too many things that required his attention on the bridge. He needed to man his station. Even when he had a full core crew complement, there had never been enough bodies for all the daily tasks. Back then, each of the enlisted had multiple jobs. A single sailor could be a cook, first responder, refueler, and assigned to fire detail. With half their numbers now gone, all those who remained had twice the workload. But maybe your thought. Oh, see, yeah. I kicked the did a lot of air by trying people in an environment, the Freedom to do just that for them. The seas were calm, and with the Freedom anchored, the landing was simple and smooth. As the rotors began to slow, the ship's large garage door started to open, and several sailors scurried out. They quickly lashed the berth to the deck with chains, preventing an unexpected wave from sliding the craft off the boat. After the blades had completely spun down, almost a dozen sailors ran out of the bay and began to cheer. Shader slid the Seahawk's side cargo bay door open. He jumped out along with Gonzalez, Keel, and Carver. They were met with high fives, fist bumps, and handshakes. The most enthusiastic greetings were reserved for Shrek. The crew of the Freedom hadn't seen a dog since they left port over half a year ago. Shrek took it all in stride as the ship's crew petted and stroked his furry coat. The Mal reminded them of a lost past, like seeing an old friend or smelling a favorite food. Shrek brought them hope. The Mal even made two of the sailors tear up. Everly called out to the two SEALs and waved them back to the Seahawk's cargo door. He pushed a couple cardboard boxes over to the edge. Both Carver and Shader each put a box on a shoulder. "A gift from the valley," Carver said as they strode past the sailors and into the ship's hangar. Once inside, both men stopped. The Freedom's Seahawk, with its rotors retracted, sat along the starboard wall. A large military storage container and the Fire Scout drone were on the port side. What made the two SEALs freeze in place were the holes that pocketed the hangar's walls. Hundreds of bullets had torn apart the interior corrugated aluminum panels. Where a round punctured the metal bulkhead, it had been repaired by various patches and makeshift occlusions to keep the seawater out. Where the .556 round found an internal wall, it was left without repair. Even duct tape was at a premium when you couldn't replace the used supplies. The sailors all stopped by, letting the two men take in the devastation. "It was a hell of a fight," the ship's chief engineer finally said. Carver acknowledged his understanding in a hushed voice. "Yeah, looks like it. That's why we're down to 23. "I know this won't make up for it," Shader said, dropping his box on Hawk. The captain to take love this or followed the captain to the second and by the helicopter. They stacked them on a large table and began to unload the supplies. "Holy crap! Coffee!" one of the sailors yelled. "It's only instant," Carver said. I don't care if it's in a tea bag. We haven't had coffee in months. Opening each of the containers brought a holiday atmosphere as it became evident that the crew had not been living, but surviving. Without the occasional treat, the ship had to have felt like a floating prison. A joyous squeal came from one sailor who discovered fresh potatoes that the Boy Scout camp's garden had already yielded. Geez, and I thought we had it bad, Carver whispered to Shader as a collective cheer came up when a gross of toilet paper was uncovered. The women seemed the happiest. I could cry, a female seaman said, smiling. We're in your debt, Tiriot said. Waited. Thanks, Captain, but we'd prefer to get started on refueling the ship. We've been thinking about how to get the gas out to you guys, Carver said. The Seahawk can handle about 15,000 pounds. That translates to about 1,800 gallons of fuel. I hate to break this to you, but the ship holds a hell of a lot more than that. 1,800 gallons isn't going to make much of a dent in what we need. Hey, keep generators going. Engaging our engines would use up our reserves within hours. Carver shook his head. So, we can't get enough fuel to make the Freedom mobile, but enough to keep the power on. Unless you want to make 50 of those flights, it won't put us out to sea. That's not what I had hoped to hear, Carver said. It's not all that bad, Tiriot said. Having a source of electricity will help us get a foothold here on the island. You're planning on staying here? Carver's face registered surprise. That's a bold step. Catalina had thousands of residents. How are you going to deal with that? I don't think there are thousands left. And how do you know this? Come here, let me show you. Tiriot led them down the passageway to the Combat Control Center. As they navigated the corridor, it was the first time Carver noticed that most of the lights were off and there was no air movement. The Mission Control Center, however, was cool, and multiple computer monitors lit the space with green and blue light. We've kept the brains of the ship going. Computers need air conditioning. The captain went to a station with a joystick that looked like a gaming console controller. He began to manipulate the buttons and the flat green screen began to pan. This is manual control for one of our 30mm guns. He continued to rotate the mount to port, bringing the harbor into view. Here, watch this. The screen zoomed in on the buildings. There was no movement. Tiriot continued to scan back and forth. The small harbor town appeared abandoned. No one's home, he said. Maybe they don't know you're here. No, we gave them a blast from the horn. As you can see, there's been no response. Where did they all go? Shader asked. They didn't just sail away. I don't know, but maybe they ran out of food and starved. Shader frowned. I don't buy that. I saw an entire Marine Expeditionary Unit destroyed back in Los Angeles using that exact thought process. Do you have a better idea where they went? The captain asked. Because I don't. Have you seen any bodies? We're too far out to see, even with our combat optics. I could send some sailors into the town after you leave, but none of us have any combat experience. We had a few Marines on board, but they were the cause of the outbreak. Our infected warriors almost killed the ship. Shader and Carver gave each other a knowing glance. The story here was the same as on the aircraft carrier they'd abandoned half a year ago. Infected fluids and wounds brought on board by the refugees of the Battle of Inglewood Forum, or the retreat from NAS asking your men. Can't you see?